And the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Hello, and we're back for Thursday. Goodness me, June the 5th. Where is the time going? This is episode 106. My name is Jason Olbourne, and the person sitting next to me, Nicola Charles. Nicola, welcome back. Big news week. Tell you what's all happening.
Is it? We're officially in winter in Australia now, aren't we, Jason? Isn't June winter?
Well, I thought in Melbourne it was winter from March. Is that not true?
It's been a bit chilly, I've got to say.
It's
It's been a
like
bit chilly, and it's a bit wet today, and we need that because the farmers need their rain. So hoping for more of that.
Well, that's really good because here in the Maitland area, I mean, we finally saw a bit of sun just an hour ago. That's the first time in it feels like about a month. It has just been waterlogged. So we have a winter and a wet season. Go figure that one out. A little bit odd back here, but yeah, very good that hopefully. Well, actually, I think the kids have got the weekend off because it's for sport because it's the long weekend.
Yes. Yeah. We're all gearing up for that long weekend. My turkey's on order from my chemical-free butcher. So it's going to be almost like Christmas in July in my house on Sunday.
Very, very good. Well, it used to be that the long weekend was when you had it was cracker night on the Saturday night of the long weekend for the then Queen's birthday, and you could go down to the local park and you could let off all the fireworks. And then suddenly it all went away, and you can only buy fireworks, I think, in Canberra these days, nowhere else.
You know they're completely legal in England, don't you? People let off absolute slews of them in their backyard, tiny postage stamp backyards, and these massive boom rockets go up in the UK. Cats and dogs. It's November the 5th, and November the 5th is hilarious in the UK, I must just tell you. It's what they call bonfire night, but it's Guy Fawkes night. So at school for the whole week before, particularly the little schools, because they do indoctrinate you into this. It's a very clever message, right? I lived it. They get you to take in your dad's old pajamas and you stuff it with newspaper or straw or whatever you've got that's flammable, and you make your Guy, and that's your Guy Fawkes. And then you build a massive bonfire, in a park or on a neighbor's farm, and you put your Guy Fawkes on November the 5th on the top and burn him to death. Why? And because Guy Fawkes went up against the government and the gunpowder plot, and he was going to blow up the Houses of Parliament because he disagreed with the government. Oh my God. So what they then do, and this is creepy like a cult, we all stand around the bonfire in a circle as small children and chant over and over, remember the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November. In other words, don't you dare go up against the government. It wasn't just a story in V for Vendetta with the very pretty Natalie Portman. It's real, Jason.
Oh, look, unreal, isn't it? And a completely different era here in Australia. I can recall as a primary school kid getting on my bike with $2 in my pocket and going to the toy shop at the local shopping centre and buying fireworks and bringing them home. And that was just what you did.
Can you have sparklers in Australia? Can you have sparklers?
Sparklers is about the limit, yes. And of course, people bring them back from Canberra all the time, and they get let off in fields and various other things, and that's what they do. But just a very different era. But I do remember the throwdown. It was a little sort of like a little tiny little packet that you'd throw on the ground. It would make a cap gun explosion. They were great fun, and people would throw them at each other's feet, and they'd do all sorts of crazy things.
Of course,
but suddenly it all got a bit dangerous.
War has broken out, Jason. That's the problem. Dogs and cats are China's here. We're all screwed.
Well, now we're being told that we're not allowed to have cats and dogs, and there's probably we won't give them any ideas, but the next thing they'll probably tax them into oblivion. I don't quite understand it. So why is it that all of a sudden cats and dogs are bad for the environment, but we have companion animals? We've seen how successful that's been for elderly people, lonely people, people with health support.
Meet
Exactly.
people. That's
Yeah.
good for mental health, you see. Do you know they keep your heart calm? They keep your heart rate down. So again, this is an example of something that's good for you that the government would really rather you didn't have.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? And so we've got the government donating or giving money to, organisations such as the RSPCA, which probably stand alone, and they promote the idea of rescuing cats and dogs, which we have rescued many cats. And I'm wondering, well, so are we going to become redundant as cat rescuers? How does that
Well,
work? And it's not like we have a house of 1 million cats with their pets, but they live in cat paradise here. And I don't quite understand that whole
it
process.
might be over. It might be over. There's a council, Windsor Council, I believe it is, which is in Japan, near Chapel Street in Melbourne. They've got this beautiful animal shelter where people have always gone and rescued animals. And they were calling for people to sort of turn up at this council meeting and protest. They're going to turn it into a kill shelter. So they don't actually. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. People are very upset. Now, I want to tell you about something else, Jason, very quickly before we move on. Yesterday, for my own strange reasons, I was trying to research gladiatorial Rome. And I just Googled, Daddy Google, such liars. And we're going to prove later on in the show how much the internet lies to you. You're going to love this one. Jason just found this absolute genius. But I went on and I could see all these letters, Jason, that didn't make any sense to me because I was expecting to see BC and AD, before Christ and then in the year of our Lord, right? Because I was looking at very old dates and they were gone from all the information. And what I found was BCE and CE. And I was like, I know I went to school a long time ago, but what's BCE and CE? So now it seems it's been changed to before the Common Era and the Common Era. Like the birth of Jesus Christ took us into just the Common Era, love.
Where did you see that?
Oh, Jason. So if you look up gladiatorial Rome or when was gladiatorial Rome, you see all these posts and it's BCE and CE. And then if you go in and investigate further and say, what's that, as I did, it tells you like it's a sleight of hand again to remove Christianity. Bastards you are. Bastards, Google.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because the usage of BCE and CE has been used by Jewish people to explain it because they don't believe in Jesus Christ being the Messiah. So they have never used BC and AD. BCE.
Well, perhaps Israel now controls Google. I don't know. People would say, of course they do, but yeah.
Yeah. So whether that's a reason or whether there's something else there or whether Google is just being anti-Christian, which doesn't mean it's being pro-Jewish. At the end of the day, Jesus was a Jewish teacher. And so that doesn't quite make sense, does it? But very, very interesting. So, so BC, BCE. Every time I hear the terms BC and I think of Ostentatious, the comedian, who I'm no longer a fan of because he's out there and very aggressive, and I've tried to have conversations with him and he shuts me down. But he's told this terrific story where he's telling this joke and he says, and he goes back in time and he says, and there these people were winding their watches from BC to AD. That was kind of how he set it up. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, I was very comfortable with that. And I was very uncomfortable not knowing. They're rewriting so much language. That's what all these pronouns and stuff is. And I just don't understand why. It's just furthermore, breaking down our civilization. It's I don't like change, Jason. So perhaps I'm just a neophyte and I need to go away and just deal with it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're right. Most people don't like change, but you can't really look at the world and think that the planet doesn't change every second. Like it's always changing. It's just how you
can't just make a decision, right? You can't write down on a piece of paper, "We're going to change all this now." And we were uncomfortable with that.
And that's the thing, isn't it? So the process of change, of making change, and official change, and I saw a comedy show last night, Jeff Allen, and he said he's a terrific comedian on Dry Bar, which for people who haven't checked out, it's a comedy show that you can pick up on YouTube, set in Utah, and no one swears because it's in Utah. That's why they call it the Dry Bar. It's just nice to watch comedy that's clean. It's still extremely funny, but Jeff Allen is one of these comedians who a lot of stories about his wife and his relationship and character. But he says, I went out and played the other day a game of woke golf. And he said, let me explain what golf is that you, wherever you hit the ball, you play it from where you feel it landed. He said, and I got 47 holes in one. So perfect.
Oh,
yeah,
very
exactly. So yeah, touche. That's kind of where we are. But look, I'm glad that in all of this crazy hostility, the world going nuts, that we can still find time to laugh, and I think that's really important. I want to just show you a couple of clips. A couple of just quick graphics here. I find this one very interesting, that Jack Posobiec said there is no way the CIA didn't know about these multiple Ukraine operations within Russia, and the White House says that they were not aware, are elements of the US intelligence community working to undermine our president's peace agenda. Well, that sounds obvious that would be the case. Now, equally, I think this clip, I've just put this one up now for you. Oh no, okay. This is related. The Putin-Trump call has concluded. The stakes couldn't be higher. Their dialogue is essential for peace, de-escalation, and global security. History is watching. Let us hope that cooperation prevails. And then Charlie Kirk has come out and said the most important thing that's happening in the world right now isn't tariff or the big beautiful bill. It's the quickly escalating war between Ukraine and Russia. Most people aren't paying attention, but we're getting closer to nuclear war than we've been since this began in 2022. Pray for peace. So there's a little bit of balance there from what is going on. So with real threats about what's happening, and thinking about with what Jack Posobiec said there, if the CIA knew and Trump didn't know, then you are seeing in real time acts of treason against the sitting president of the United States. There will be arrests at this stage. Like it is coming, like you wouldn't believe. And we're going to get into more of that in a minute. What I might do now for you is just play a couple of clips coming out of Ukraine and Russia. Here is Zelensky after the attacks over the nuclear capable equipment and then the bridge. Here he is calling for a ceasefire.
My proposal, we offer, which I believe our partners can support, is that we propose to the Russians a ceasefire until the leaders meet. We offer a meeting any day starting from Monday. Why ceasefire before leaders meet? Because we can meet, and if there is no mutual understanding, if there is not desire for de-escalation, if there is no desire and vision how to put an end to it, then the ceasefire will be over the same day. It can be initiated unilaterally by the Russians. Please feel free to do so.
How far the little stripper has come. He's now acting like a little dictator, isn't he? We're happy to talk any day from Monday. You know, not we're happy to talk any time from now that you want to reach out, because this is, global thermal nuclear war, from Monday. We're booking from Monday. I mean, this guy is it's bipolar leadership is what it is. Like he either gets his marching orders from, several different sides, or he's like these people are like sadists. They're all like this. Our leaders are like this. Our politicians, Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, Ursula von der Leyen, King Charles III, they are sadists because they're quite happy for us to stress about the fact the world is on the brink of war or starvation or climate catastrophe or multiple pandemics. That's the state they wish us to exist in, and that's sadism. Because you're supposed to allay people's fears and create a harmony in society, and none of them know how to do that anymore.
Well, let's play Putin's response. I think it's equally important to lay that out for you, and then we'll talk about what Trump said after his phone call with Putin today.
It was a deliberate strike, and it only confirms our suspicions that the illegitimate regime in Kiev that came to power through a coup is now being reborn as a terrorist organization, and its sponsors become supporters of terrorism. Recently, the Ukrainian government and their allies dreamt of inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. Now they're withdrawing from the battle zone, fleeing, and now the Kiev regime is trying to resort to terrorist attacks. At the same time, they're asking for a ceasefire. They're asking for top-level meetings. But how can we organize such meetings? Something like this is happening. What is there to talk about? How can we negotiate with those who are resorting to terrorism? And why should we reward them with a cessation in hostilities, allowing them to receive additional weapons, to continue their mobilization and to prepare for more terrorist attacks like those in the Bryansk and Kursk regions?
He should take a leaf out of George Bush Jr.'s playbook and say, we don't negotiate with terrorists. And he's right about that. And those sponsoring that terrorism are shamefully, the British government, to some degree, the Australian government, because, he's right. You cannot strike and then within 24, 48 hours call for a ceasefire and do you want to meet and talk about peace? What's going on over there, Jason? I really don't understand it. I don't profess to understand it, but I feel like Zelensky is out of control.
Well, what we are seeing is, without doubt, is what Jack Posobiec has mentioned here, that there is no way the CIA didn't know what's going on. Are elements of the US intelligence community working to undermine our president's peace agenda? Well, we only saw Mike Pompeo, former head of the CIA, former Secretary of State for Donald Trump, no longer involved with the Trump administration, arriving in Ukraine just as these explosions, etc., and these attacks happened. Also, Lindsey Graham, who we know is a rhino, who we know was the best friend of John McCain, also over there, and Democrat Richard Blumenthal, who is a chief ally to Hillary Clinton. So for mine, that is just lining them up. This is why I said yesterday, the idea of walking the plank. Are these people being forced out into the sunlight by an administration that knows exactly what they will do to expose what's really going on? So when Charlie Kirk says that we're close to this nuclear threat, he's right. But you just wonder who is really in control and pulling the strings, because we have been told for such a long time that optics are necessary, just as disinformation is necessary. And we're going to talk about disinformation in a moment when we're talking about the big, beautiful bill.
If you're talking about who's pulling the strings, history is a great teacher. Just look to history for everything. What happened during the Barack Obama administration? We have the clips. Joe Biden's influence over Ukraine and telling them, if you don't sack your attorney general, who was investigating something suspicious that the US government or Joe Biden was involved in, or his son Hunter, with regard to Hunter's position on the board of Burisma, we're going to remove that $1 billion in aid or $1 billion loan or support that was coming from America. Then we're told publicly by the deep state that the Clinton Foundation is going to rebuild Ukraine. Look at the people involved. They're not on the right side of it, are they? As far as I know, there aren't Trump family members on the boards of big energy companies in Ukraine. Or the owners of any biological weapons research labs in Ukraine. So Ukraine is pivotal. I've said before, that's their jumping off point, the deep state, to get Russia.
It is the it is the centerpiece of what everything is going on here. And when you have the threat of nuclear war, all eyes are on. But what's interesting is how people aren't really following what's going on there. They seem to be confused by it. And this is where I think what's going on here is this idea that the news gives you a permission on a given day to not pay attention. So that's why Murdoch Press will always have an OnlyFans story. It will, it'll always have a story about, something to do with shopping and something to do, meaningless drivel. So you go, oh, well, there's nothing in the news today. But they always have a Trump bashing story every day as a mainstream story, one way or another.
And a vaccine story. Vaccines are great. You're going to get sick unless you do it story. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Trump did speak with Vladimir Putin, and he sent out a message that said, "I've just finished speaking by telephone with President Vladimir Putin. The call lasted approximately 75 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace." Putin did say, and very strongly, that he'll have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. We also discussed Iran and the fact that time is running out on Iran's decision pertaining to nuclear weapons, which must be made quickly. I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and on this, I believe that they were in agreement. Putin suggested that he will participate in the discussions with Iran and that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a rapid conclusion. It is my opinion that Iran has been slow walking their decision on this very important matter and will need a definitive answer in a very short period of time. Now, I have to say that I did come out and say this a while ago, that when this comes down to Iran, this is the beautiful thing about the relationship with Putin and Trump, is that Iran has a very strong relationship with Russia, and it's kind of like a big brother relationship. So when Putin says you can't have a nuclear weapon, it'll be because of Putin that will make the difference that the West could never have done before, because they don't have that relationship. So using your weakness as your strength, as you would argue, that Russia is the sworn mortal enemy of the deep state United States, but not of Donald Trump, and therefore this is what's going to happen. Meanwhile, I will play you a clip now from the Supreme Leader of Iran, and he is very adamant that he's not going to be told what to do. Take a look.
البته قبل از این حرفا، قبل از این توضیحات، اولین مطلبی که ما در باب هسته‌ای به طرف‌های آمریکایی و غیره میگیم اینه که شما چه کاره اید؟ چرا دخالت میکنید که ایران باید غنیسازی داشته باشه یا نداشته باشه؟ به شما چه؟ شما امکانات اتمی دارید، بمب اتم دارید، ویرانگری شدید دنیا در اختیار شماست. به شما چه؟ که ملت ایران غنیسازی داشته باشه یا نداشته باشه، صنعت هسته‌ای داشته باشه یا نداشته باشه، یه ملتی اختیارش دست خودشه. به شما ربطی نداره. شما چه کاره اید؟ از چه موضع حقوقی این حرفا رو شما میزنید؟ این مطلب ماست. این هم راجع به مسئله هسته‌ای.
So they're playing hardball. They don't want to be told what to do, and they don't believe that they need to not be equipped with what other nations are. However, we did also talk about this on the show last week, that they were open to having sanctions removed in order to stop enriching uranium. I'll make this point, that Iran is also the hub for all transport in the region, and they have that north-south transit corridor, a big modern railway line that will be used to facilitate. So it will be an economic truce, if you will, that will prevent Iran from having said nuclear weapon. That would be the most likely outcome, that Putin will use as a tool, and for Trump to accept, because they wanted to have these sanctions removed. There'll be something in that facility, so we'll keep our eyes on. Really interesting.
I just want to say, going back to Putin, what's going on with Zelensky is, imagine if Putin did a massive strike on Kiev overnight, and we actually did see the thing that we haven't seen really in this conflict, which is a beautiful city that's known to the people of this world demolished and harm done, like the Blitz in London, right? And then within hours of blitzing Kiev, said, now let's sit down and talk. What would the world think of Vladimir Putin then?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Isn't it interesting, though, that how people will turn a blind eye to support their biases? And that's exactly the point that you've made there. This is the hardest thing, and this is the same thing with doing news, and often why people get upset with us when they don't like something that we say, and so they switch off. And I'm kind of like, well, if we're only going to look for information that supports our biases, why do we even bother producing anything, and why does anybody even bother consuming anything? Just believe in what you believe in and switch off and go and enjoy yourself, go do something else. But you can't always agree. You have to be able to interview people that you disagree with. This is how you advance knowledge, by having discussions, debates, etc. And I'll tell you what, I am the first person. I want to be wrong about everything. I want to be wrong about the dangers of that jab. I want to be totally wrong. I want it to not be that case. I want to be wrong about certain other things that are happening. I want to be wrong.
It's important that you played that clip of how the supreme leader of Iran really feels about things, because I don't think you'll see that there on the establishment media. I mean, that's the truth of how the guy feels.
This is it. And isn't it ironic that the source for that clip came from a news source in Russia? You saw it up in the top right of screen, that is dismissed as disinformation. And there they are playing a clip. There you go, explaining how he feels about something extraordinary.
Well, we're going to expose disinformation and misinformation, aren't we, Jason?
Well,
is it time?
We're going to play. This is from this, the segment, The Elephant in the Room, which it's a bit like you want to play it at the end of the show. It's just good fun. However, I have got another story about disinformation that I want to explain to you right now. This one is to do with the big, beautiful bill. So we've all heard that this is obviously Big Beautiful Bill is Trump vernacular. It is meant to be the great big bill, big tax cuts, etc. So Trump says it's going to save money. This is as a result of Doge, etc. But two things have happened. The first one is that Elon Musk has come out really, really hard against it. So people are saying, well, what is this really about? So here's his latest. Elon Musk, call your senator, call your congressman. Bankrupting America is not okay. Kill the bill. I mean, that's them's harsh fighting words. He is not happy, especially if he's given up 3 months of his life to go and do the whole Doge thing for no money and literally lose, billions in valuations of companies, etc. They've gone up and down and so on. So he's saying that it's got too much pork in it. That means too much wasted money. We can't afford it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the fence, here he is, old Smithers himself, also known as Chuck Schumer. He's telling you that the big, beautiful bill, well, it's going to kill you.
And we all know one thing. Donald Trump is just lying about the bill. Lying about the bill. Well, here's the "We Are All Going to Die" act.
We're the all gonna die act, right? Isn't that that's a great slogan, Chuck? Thank you. God, Chuck's an expert in politics. He really is. Nasty individual, if you ask my personal opinion on that. But yeah, we're all gonna die mandate. You could use that in so many areas, couldn't you? It's interesting. Actually, Elon Musk tweeted out that big yellow picture from the movie Kill Bill this morning. And I thought he was referring to something else, but he was.
There you go. Kill the bill. So isn't it funny, though, that he's telling you that 14 million people are going to lose access to healthcare? Elon Musk is saying that we're going to go bankrupt. Trump is the one in the middle saying, well, this is the bill. But he also said that if you want changes, make changes. So why does the master of the narrative then retweet this today? Donald Trump, there you go, retweeting Elon Musk as my scheduled time as special government employee comes to an end. I'd like to thank the president for the opportunity to reduce wasteful spending. The Doge mission will only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life throughout the government. So in other words, Trump and Musk are playing enemies, but clearly they are not if Trump is retweeting something that Elon Musk says and supporting.
I don't like this. Right. So I believe that the entire purview of government, they believe, is to make sure that we never discover the truth, because us discovering the truth is bad for business. So we live in two worlds: the world where they will spend millions, probably billions of our money, making sure that a very controlled media, because they all get their core stories from Reuters and the Associated Press, and this is all, Rothschild, Rockefeller owned. They spend a lot of money making sure that we believe certain things, or we're down here, as we often are on this show, trying to work out what the hell is going on, but that we never know the truth of what's going on. And it's really starting to piss me off, Jason, because I think it's extremely unfair. We fund this stuff. This stuff is done in our name. And Vladimir Putin isn't wrong when he's essentially referencing state-sponsored terrorism. I believe these injection rollouts were state-sponsored terrorism. And I've said many times, not in my name. Why can't we know the truth? Why can't we have transparency? Why do we only have people who say I'm being transparent, but are then not transparent? We don't know who our Australian Prime Minister is meeting with today or tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday. We don't know who's going to be in the meeting. We're not going to see the minutes. There's all these closed door discussions now. And I'm starting to think that we're very, very foolish to believe that we have democracy. Clearly we don't. I just want to quickly mention one tiny story from Victoria, by the way. The farmers here in Victoria are putting videos out because the government has offered them $5,000 for their drought relief, $5,000 to a giant farm that has like dairy cows and stuff. But to get the $5,000, you first have to prove that you've spent $10,000 of your own money. So that's completely pointless. But there's a caveat in this $5,000 drought money, Jason, that it cannot and must not be used for either water or feed to be brought in for the animals. What kind of sadistic people in government would give $5,000 in a grant to a farmer and then tell them they may not feed or water their animals with it? Apparently pregnant cows, pregnant dairy cows, cattle are going off to the meat farm, to the markets, pregnant, to be slaughtered pregnant because they're not allowed to bring in water and feed for them. Unbelievable. Very sad.
So you would have to wonder what the the agriculture minister or whatever the appropriate person is in Victoria. How do you answer for that?
They don't care. It's all these UN agendas. I'll tell you another tidbit that I found out yesterday. Because I commented on Magda Zabansky's rhetoric regarding she was accused of supporting vaccines and lockdowns, and she denied it. I looked at her bio and I thought, well, what's she up to? What else does she do? And on her bio, it says that she's an ambassador for something called Phoenix Australia, which is an organization that apparently has exhibited excellence in PTSD. And apparently Magda's an ambassador for that. And that's fair enough. So the next thing I always do, like when I ask you to name diseases and fungi to see if they're patented, the next thing I do is I find out, well, who are the financial backers of Phoenix Australia? And the primary backers are the Australian government and the UN.
Oh, what a surprise.
So that explains a lot to me. So that's in the bio for you. Anyone want to go to that X account for Magda? You can see Phoenix Australia, look it up, funded by the UN. Boom. Thank you very much.
And so here's the point, right? So people can argue that Magda is either in on it, but she's paying the price. She is just another useful idiot that just got soaked up, got offered it, went along, goes along to get along. When the big people come knocking, then you just play, and that's the case. How many people are we seeing that are just paying the price for believing the narrative? It's just horrific. So last man, last woman standing. We just got to keep going on here and just presenting the news as it comes out.
Talking about last man and woman standing, Jason, the project has got axed according to New Idea.
Did you see me smile when you said that? Sorry, guys. Unwatchable show.
Australians are jumping around with joy because apparently they only get a couple of thousand viewers now, and that they're always kind. So I'm assuming, like the ABC News, they've got like 7 viewers left. And it's just extraordinary. Pundits are saying that if this was on any other network, it would have been canned years ago. And they're scratching their heads. What can we replace it with? So I suggested on X that they replace it with this show, at least give Australian people, something that they want to watch. I mean, you've got to, surely. If you've not got any more viewers, then you've not got any more advertisers. And the people at Channel 10 in Como on Toorak Road there in Melbourne, you'll all lose your jobs. So I suggest that you make sure you're producing something or showing something that Australians actually want to watch. And you know what? You don't need to agree with it. All you need to do, or the only prerequisite we would have to be on any network, is that we will not allow big pharma advertising during the time that our show is on. right? We won't promote big pharma. So, do this for Australia. It's absolutely ridiculous. That show's been appalling. It's so banal. It's like it's nails down a chalkboard for me. Every time they speak, they make their own guests very uncomfortable. And it's the kind of Australia that, existed 20 years ago. That world, the way they present and the way they are and their views is so old school now. They haven't learned anything through this period in history, and it's literally unwatchable. So I'm not surprised. Sorry, guys, you'll be kicked out into the real world like the rest of us.
Yeah, there you go. Well, when you have, so-called comedians hosting news shows, and then you've got, the woke ex-ABC talent coming over to Channel 10 to be able to push this program, it's only going in one direction. There's only so much you can tolerate before you just have to switch off once and for all. Now, staying in Australia for the moment, there's a couple of stories we want to get out there. This one, so the former Victorian opposition leader, John Pesutto, is in a whole lot of hot water. Now that we're hearing that supporters of him are questioning the Victorian Liberals' priorities over reluctance to bail out the former leader. So several Victorian Liberals have accused the party of hypocrisy after it paid lawyers to represent its administrative wing in an unfair dismissal claim, while so far declining to save former party leader Pesutto from bankruptcy. So Monday, lawyers for Victorian Liberal MP Moira Deeming initiated bankruptcy proceedings against him after he failed to meet a deadline to pay her $2.3 million in legal costs. Pesutto has less than 21 days to pay, enter into a payment agreement, or face bankruptcy, which would lead to a by-election in his seat of Hawthorne. His supporters have written to the administrative committee urging them to help him pay Deeming's legal costs. So far, no meeting has been called to discuss these requests. Any deal would require the authorization of the 19-person committee. So that is a really interesting story that's brewing there, and we've seen that he's received. Go on.
Jeff Kennett believes that the people of Australia on his X account should help bail this politician out. Now, this isn't just about money. If this politician is declared bankrupt, he can never be a politician again. That's one of the rules. And that's what he's worried about. This isn't just going bankrupt and the movement of money. This is the end of his political career. So it's interesting, isn't it? Isn't it a shame that we can't sue for their wealth those who've done harm against us, because they'll panic, because not only will they lose their money, that they'll lose the opportunity to continue being a bureaucrat. I think it's rich to ask the people that have been harmed in this country by bureaucrats, and I'm not saying it's him specifically. It's a bit rich to ask the everyday person to bail that person out. I mean, my suggestion is that he try and enlist Monica Schmidt, because apparently she gets money out of people really easily without any proof of where it's going. So maybe give her a call.
Yeah, well. It is fascinating, isn't it? You defame someone in politics from your own party, you throw them out of the party, you lose in court, and somehow you've got to be bailed out. Mate, you failed and you're out. So hopefully that'll be the end of John Pesutto. I obviously don't wish the harm on his family going bankrupt, but bankruptcy is not necessarily as bad as it feels.
Well, they're happy for us to go bankrupt, Jason. How many people, farmers, business owners have gone bankrupt because of politicians? And now a politician says, can you stop me going bankrupt? I'm sorry, what?
Yep. No, exactly. I just know people who have reported that they have gone bankrupt have said that that the fear of bankruptcy was worse than the actual act of it. Once they decided to make that decision, the phone stopped ringing, people stopped knocking at the door. They were allowed to keep what they had earned up to a certain point. They were allowed to drive a car, live their lives, and they thought why they didn't do that years ago and go through an early discharge, getting out of that whole thing in 3 years instead of 7 and moving on with their lives. So, Pesutto, instead of telling us how to live, you're going to have to reinvent the way that you live. There's not a whole lot of sympathy there for you. Meanwhile, also in Australian news, Matt Kean, there you go, very flattering picture of Matt standing in front of a roundy. He's telling politicians to get out of the way of climate action. In his speech at the Australian Museum, Matt Kean, who took the job as some climate czar, a bureaucrat on megabucks after being the Liberal treasurer, also briefly referred to a climate change authority's work advising the Albanese government on a 2035 emissions reduction target. The advice was delayed before last month's federal election. The advice and a government announcement is now expected by September before the COP30 summit in Brazil in November. Kean said he wanted a target that was ambitious, informed by the science, but also also achievable. He has previously said the authority was consulting with stakeholders on a target range of 65 to 75% below 2005 levels. Well, let's hope that is.
Do you see how it's dragging out, Jason? Now they're talking 2035, because we all thought, oh, Agenda 2021, Agenda 2030. We get to 2030, it'll all be over. Now they're pushing it back. They're pushing it back to 2035. This is forever. The climate hoax and this business model is forever if you let it fly, if you buy into it and you accept the taxation and you accept the restrictions, because it's not about the climate, right? This is about the Great Reset. This is their lever. This is their excuse to demolish your life, your ability to move around. There'll be no more jumping on a plane and going on holiday for 2 weeks in Fiji or Bali or any of that, because to do that will mean you can't drive a car. I mean, does that guy drive a car? Does he have a house? Does he have a gas cooktop? Of course he does. Does he have ducted heating? Does he live in a beautiful mansion and has an open fire? Does he fly around? Yes, he does. Elbow flies around. They call him in Australia the Prime Minister Airbus Elbow because he flies around so much. These people are such hypocrites and they're such liars. And I'll tell you what, you've got to have some cojones on you. You've got to have some big brass balls to stand there every single time you're asked to speak and lie through your teeth about it. And these people are handpicked for their ability to lie. They're the best salespeople you've ever met. Make sure you adhere to none of it. Refuse it all.
Oh, I didn't like the fact that you slandered the salespeople. They've got nothing on these politicians. It's unreal. Now, speaking of climate hoaxes, that is the little boat that Greta Thunberg is on, and whilst it's on its way to Gaza, Israel has blocked the boat from reaching Gaza, rejecting the move to avoid setting a dangerous precedent. Defence Minister Katz may order the vessel to be left at sea or escorted to Ashdod for the arrest of those on board. Well, there you go, Greta. She's always
you know what
in
she's
the thick
doing?
of it.
I'll tell you what Greta Thunberg is doing. I folded my arms. When you see me fold my arms, viewers, I mean business. My husband runs when I fold my arms. Greta Thunberg is in war tourism. She's going for her war tourism so that she can get some kind of mileage out of the fact that people are dying. You are a sick little puppy. You are a sick little girl. You need to go and get a real job. I don't know what's going on in the background of your life or why you think anyone on this planet. She's literally like the little mini me of Bill Gates. She is one of these people that is so despised by the masses and yet goes out there as if she's some authority that people want to hear what she's got to say. She's as popular as Bill Gates, and yet she goes out there. Who paid for the boat? Who paid the money? Who paid for her to fly to Sicily to then jump on the boat, sail around? I mean, this girl is a joke. Do not think that war tourism is cool. Get out of there, silly little thing.
Now, yesterday, or in fact earlier in the week, we talked about this Mohammed Solomon character who was the one that threw the Molotov cocktails at the Israeli supporting demonstrators in the States. Yesterday, his family were told that there will be 6 one-way tickets for his wife and 5 kids and that they will be deported. Well, what would you think would happen? Good old Judge Gordon Gallagher has decided to block the deportation of Colorado's attack suspect's family, as you would expect there. Judge Gordon Gallagher, looking like a character from a Chesty Bond cartoon, has decided to play the lawfare card once again. And Trump himself has come out in this particular case. These tough guys, he says, the courts must let me do the job. This is a bunch of convicted criminals that they want deported, and the court's going the other way there. So it feels like once again that we are headed down a pathway that will lead to military being the only way in the Insurrection Act of 1807, where these activist judges feel like that they are running the country. But it is just a standard process now. It's not even a legal process. That's quite extraordinary.
That guy had a very unfortunate jaw, didn't he? Put him up again.
Let's have a look where he is. Here he comes, Gordon Gallagher. Look at
that. Real?
Yeah. Very, very square jaw and a flat, if that is a smile or a grimace, I don't know what it is. But
if ever you were to tell me that a human being was built in a lab I'd believe you on that one. I've never seen anything like that. Poor guy. Anyway.
Yeah, poor guy. There you go. Now, meanwhile, Columbia University has received a violation of its accreditation in response to violating federal anti-discrimination laws by failing to protect Jewish students from harassment. Today, the Department of Education is reporting the violation to Columbia's accreditor, the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. So they've been put on notice. And it's a fair point there, isn't it? That if you're going down the pathway of DEI and safety at any level, you can't allow for certain people to be abused
it has to
in
be
the
across the
universities.
board.
Correct.
Yeah, it's got to be for everyone. Yeah.
That's right. So very interesting again with what's happening there. So the other thing is also interesting is that in Australia we had an interest rate cut last month. For some reason this month, it must be due to the long weekend, the Reserve Bank isn't meeting, so they'll meet again in July. But there is a tip that there'll be yet another interest rate cut. Well, Donald Trump's been talking about this for some time, that the head of the US Fed, itself a private institution headed by Jerome Powell, he will not cut interest rates, just won't do it. And all the indicators are there for him to do it, inflation low, et cetera, et cetera. So Trump's come out again today. The new numbers are out. It's too late, Powell, he calls him, must now lower the rate. He is unbelievable. Look at this. Europe has lowered 9 times their interest rates. So there is something going on there. But again, it's fascinating the games that are playing out because the only reason that you wouldn't drop interest rates is that you're trying to stop inflation. But if you leave them high, you're crippling the economy because the price of money is too high. So it's an act of sabotage.
The agenda is to cripple the economy. Do you know that these bankers, the guys that actually own these banks, do you know that they make millions of dollars a day, tens of millions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions of dollars a day just on fees? You know, when you go to the ATM and it says it's not your ATM or whatever, and it's a $2 fee, it's bloody outrageous. Some of them are outrageous. Or you move money from one account to the next. I notice it because I receive a tiny little bit of an income from my social media. And, you know, it tells you all the different institutions that took a little bit of your subscription fees from your subscribers. And it's only a bit, you know, it's 60 cents here or $2 there. But, you know, they make millions a day just on the fees, never mind the interest rates, never mind mortgages and all that. You know, this has got to stop. This is that they are a criminal cartel, these banks. And because they're so powerful financially, it seems we have no sway over how they operate. They're outside the law, and that has to change.
I think that this is one of these campaigns again by Trump to expose them, knowing that they were going to dig their heels in to end the Fed, because people have been asking for a long time. So this would go a long way to breaking up the central bank that is a private institution. So people should be looking on, hopefully, and see what's happening. Is this the direction forward? Now, in some tragic news out of India, I'm going to play a short clip. 11 people were killed in a stampede at the cricket where a team won the IPL for the first time. It's tragic. Short clip.
In a stampede outside a cricket stadium in India, thousands of supporters had lined the street to welcome the victorious Royal Challengers Bengaluru team following their win in the IPL. Some fans were seen climbing trees and the stadium wall as people without passes tried to push through the gates. Officials confirm 47 people have been injured as well.
Oh my God. See, this is the sad thing about celebrity. I remember once I did a PA, a personal appearance at the 21st Century nightclub in Frankston in Melbourne. And when I was on television on the soap opera, and they have this revolving dance floor, and it was packed with people. And I went out on stage, and the dance floor was revolving, and everyone surged the stage. It was as if the people at the front didn't exist. And a girl fell and she had her arm broken. And I just lost it. I got on the microphone and said, you know, celebrities are not what you think. I completely burst their bubble. I'm just an ordinary person, just like you. I said to the room, and you've hurt this girl, stop it and back off. And I just completely killed the mood, because it drives me crazy how people that think that sports stars and politicians and TV and film celebrities are different. They're not. They're just people. So don't surge to see them or to get a photograph. It's crazy to me. I don't understand it.
I guess, if you're amongst it and you know the reality of it, it's a different point, isn't it? But I guess it's also the idea of access. But it shows you a funny thing about society, that what we measure as some form of success, that notoriety, that being famous, etc. Like I talked again last week with that fellow that told me years ago. He said, "Value your anonymity. It is priceless to not be known." And of course, we know that today in the age of surveillance, how right he was to be able to do that. And so people now modifying the way that they behave on social media. And if you have been taken out on social media and you decide to go back on, it's a really interesting point about what you decide to share and not to share from that point. And less is most definitely more. Well, Nicola, as we get into sort of the last leg of today's show, I think there's a couple of funny things to share. Before we get to the elephant in the room segment, I want to show you this one. I think this is hysterical. So this is a little bit of an argy-bargy between Senator Cory Booker and Senator Ted Cruz, each who are accusing the other of hypocrisy. It's what Ted Cruz calls Senator Cory Booker is where you're going to get your laugh.
You are very, very, sir, very, very deep into the waters of hypocrisy in your criticisms of Chuck Schumer.
So let the record reflect that Spartacus did not answer the question and did not tell us whether the criminal law should be enforced, because he knows the answer is yes. And he knows that the Biden Department of Justice was being wildly political and partisan in refusing to enforce the law because they disagreed with the Supreme Court justice's rulings.
There was no point of order for calling him Spartacus. Oh, Ted Cruz, I love it.
Oh, God, that was funny.
So Cory Booker has been grandstanding doing these big filibusters and standing outside the Congress on the steps for hours and days, etc. And there he is defending the great hypocrite himself, Chuck Schumer, who accuses the president of lying and calling it the death bill. And there you go.
Booker, you've picked the wrong side. You're on the wrong team, buddy. Come on over to the good side.
Just love it. Now, so I think it's time that we can start. Because we've got a fair bit to talk about today in the elephant in the room segment. Let's play the opener. We'll play the little clip, and then we'll come back and discuss. Here we go.
I love that you didn't even cut that little TikTok off the end, Jason, naughty boy. So that was a reasonably peaceful protest by people who are offended, aren't they? Because Target has removed a lot of its trans clothing and toys and stuff for children. And I said to you before we came to air that as a mom of two girls, I remember going into Target and looking at swimwear. And I noticed, because mine were a bit older, but I noticed in the little girls section, there was pink swimsuits. There was swimwear that had pouches at the bottom at the front, so that boys who identified as girls could tuck in their bits. And you said to me or something, no, never. They denied that. They denied that. And you fact checked me, and a fact check said, Target never did that. An official fact checker. There you go. That's Business Insider. And then what happened, Jason?
So Target didn't offer tuck-friendly bathing suits for kids. Here what it is, and it isn't part of its Pride celebration line. So they even doubled down on it.
But
so
I
what we
saw
did
them.
was,
I
but you saw
them.
them. And so you then dig a little deeper and scroll down a little bit further. Let's show you a couple of things that we've got. So this is the alternate competing news. So this is on Fox. Consumers creeped out by Target's tuck-friendly women's swimwear. Shopping elsewhere, it's hideous. It's exactly what a dude pretending to be a woman would wear, comedian Chrissy Mayer told Fox News Digital. So, hang on a second. Tuck-friendly? No, they didn't offer tuck-friendly. Well, here's the comedian herself. Comedian Chrissy Mayer points out the tags on a swimsuit stocked at Target in time for Pride Month. The tags, let's look a little closer, indicate, what's that say? Tuck-friendly construction with extra crotch coverage. Of course it does. God. And there you go. That is her tweet right there. Thanks to Target, I found the perfect swimsuit for creeping out all the women and children at the pool this summer. Can't wait to tuck my into this little number while sipping a Bud Light.
Jesus,
Unbelievable.
too much TMI. It's funny, isn't it? Because they accuse independent media all the time, and perhaps sometimes they're right. But they accuse independent media and just the general public in Australia, who are not news organizations, they're just people having their opinion, of misinformation and disinformation. And the first thing people do, particularly on social media, on X, is they go, "I'm going to fact check you and I've debunked you and it's not true." Now, what you need to understand is that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it was found historically, control a lot of those, like Snopes and all that, right? They donate, so they get to say what's going on. That one was Business Insider, which was really shocking. So when you fact check someone and then you go back at them on X or Facebook or wherever, and you say, "Oh, that's been debunked. That's not right, Nicola Charles, the White Rabbit." The fact check itself is misinformation and disinformation.
Yes.
I mean, Fox weren't lying, and she was in there with the swimsuit, and I can categorically tell you I saw it, and it was for children this big. It was for tiny children. So I'm kind of glad that's gone. Sorry if that offends some people.
Well, very true. So there is no tuck-friendly bathing suits for kids. Tuck-friendly construction. All right, so they're going to argue that it wasn't for kids. That's the argument that they're going to say. But the elephant in the room, where was the clip? Here they are again.
Shame on Target.
So they're arguing, and there's kids there supporting tuck-friendly costumes. So how does that?
If you need anything weird, a GIMP outfit or anything, you can go online. There's places you can go for all kinds of weird stuff that you want. And you don't need to have it in stores that might confuse a child as to what's going on, I think, personally.
One of the things that's bothered me is this attack on men that, for various different reasons. First of all, there was the gentle approach, which was that that there was an argument that men should be dating trans women, and almost saying that it should be forced, if you will. And then the argument went the other way and said, well, toxic masculinity. But here's a tweet I saw recently. I kept it. Look at this. Liberal Democrats believe that testosterone is the root of all evil, and they should put it in a syringe and inject it into a little girl's arm. It's a very, very interesting point, that, isn't it? A certain perspective there.
Someone contacted me yesterday, and they are in a relationship with someone who works at one of these IVF clinics. And they just said to me, "You need to investigate why this trans thing is taking off." And to be honest, I haven't looked at it in depth. I've had friends and colleagues who are trans, and I've just, it's just not something I've delved into. But this person is of the belief that certain things are done in the creation of, this new life that could potentially be causing this identity confusion later on. So that's interesting. I don't know. I'd never heard of anything like that. But we do know, don't we, through gain of function, that they're doing all kinds of strange things in labs. They're lying to us about it. So I think it's something to bear in mind.
You have to wonder, don't you, about what is put into one's own body at any level that is unchecked or untried, and when you have certain cell lines, etc., can that be confusing? Chromosome development, etc., and other things. But it's this total confusion, but this lack of willingness to want to investigate. Now, perhaps before we go, I just want to put up one graphic here. This is from Bobby Kennedy. Now, this is again related to Moderna and this particular vaccine, because we saw that John Campbell came out and said something along the lines of the testing, and they're putting this out there, and the 2% injury rate, etc. So Bobby Kennedy has put this tweet out, which he said, I want to address those of you who have anxieties about the FDA's limited approval of a new mRNA COVID vaccine for high-risk populations. Moderna has agreed to a true placebo-controlled trial of the new vaccine, which is similar to the existing mRNA vaccine but uses a smaller protein. The FDA will monitor and collect data throughout the trial for every adverse outcome, not just a table list of expected outcomes. FDA will scrutinize every aspect of the trial. We will deliver on our promise to use gold standard science and common sense. So that is
I'm disappointed by that. I'm just going to say I'm disappointed by that. I really am disappointed by that. For me, the CDC in particular are now the centers of disease creation. They're certainly not the centers for disease control. And I know that, RFK is now working with the FDA, but I don't like it. And by the way, Albert Bourla of Pfizer has come out in defense of Moderna, who lost that 700 million plus government money to develop the bird flu vaccine. And he is a nasty piece of work, that Albert Bourla. And he said, well, the whole world can look forward to diseases coming back, because unless you're constantly injected with mRNA, you're all going to get sick. I mean, what an absolute monster. This is health terrorism. Why? I think, in all fairness, we have now for 5 years, and it's destroyed 5 years of our lives. It's destroyed my peaceful enjoyment of being a mum, my family. I'm newly married from last year, and my enjoyment of Australia in general, my peaceful enjoyment. The last 5 years have been absolute hell. Now, for the last 5 years, the people of this planet have been used as a petri dish in what we were told by former Health Minister Greg Hunt was the largest human trial in history. We've been through the human trial. The outcome is devastating. We talked about this on Club Grubbery yesterday when we were guests on there, about all the people around me and that I know that have been injured by this, and all the people we now have to worry about. We don't need to talk about random placebo-controlled trials. We know, excuse me, that this stuff is dangerous. Right. And we don't want any more trials. We don't want any more mRNA. There's been devastating sudden deaths of people at such a young age. And I just think it's shocking that they're even considering it. For me, it shows on some level that perhaps Trump and RFK are a bit tone deaf to what the general public are feeling about it. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why people are not believing anything else Trump is doing. And I know you're a massive fan of his, Jason, but we've had the human trial. It failed. That's the conversation no one's prepared to have, because they've put so much money, they've put trillions into their new OPEC, their new oil, which is healthcare. But unfortunately, they've proved that they're not up to the job. Because you can't go into the Amazon rainforest, pull out something evil, or into a bat cave in China, infect the world with it, and then profit from a remedy that actually makes things worse. So that's the thing they don't want us to say. You failed, and we're not interested anymore. Apparently in Queensland, in Australia, the government's freaking out because less than 250,000 Queenslanders have had a COVID booster, and COVID's coming back. By the way, the New South Wales government, let me show you this, and I apologize that I didn't send it to Jason and it's only on my phone. The New South Wales government are also a little bit miffed that people aren't getting their flu injections. And they've put this poster out, and they're making the flu look like COVID. So the spike protein, the happy side and the angry disease side, New South Wales government there up in the corner. And it's like flu, COVID, COVID, flu, COVID. Get your injections, get your injections. We heard this week that for children, healthy children and pregnant women, no more mRNA COVID jabs. So now what are they doing? They're pushing the flu jabs. This is some kind of sick cult to get this stuff into people. It's got to be.
We are so weak as a society that we panic about these things, and everyone's got an immune problem, and everyone's got an immunosuppression and autoimmune and everything else.
Well, they
do. And how do we get to this stage? I remember as a kid listening to the football commentary on the ABC radio, and specifically the first female ever commentator in football, Debbie Spillane, reporting on the day that Peter Sterling, playing for Parramatta, had the flu, but wouldn't let something pesky like that stop him from getting onto the field, and he was expected to play. I'll never forget it in my year, because I think he ended up did playing, and they got smashed that day, because I remember going to Luna Park and listening to it on some radio, and they because that was my team, and they got slaughtered, and would think, well, he shouldn't have played if he was sick. But the point was that nothing like the flu was going to stop him from playing a game of rugby league and getting thrown around on a field for 80 minutes. But today, if we've got this New South Wales state government telling you that influenza is not scary if you take a flippin' vaccine. Otherwise, you might have to sit at home for 3 days with a runny nose and watch movies and eat chicken soup and drink lemonade, for goodness sake. It is preposterous that that's where we are. On the RFK story, I will argue that this is the lawyer that took on the big pharma. He knows exactly what he is doing. He knows that 80% of the population are not interested, maybe even more. And those that are, well, they're going to participate in this trial anyway. So I believe that this is a process to prove and catch them in the act one way or another. And if they do something that will cheat the system, like destroy the control group or something like that, well, this is the case. And of course, we do know that here in our own country, with Julian Gillespie on the show a few days back, telling us about the destruction of specific samples that would have shown the damage that it would have caused. So there is evidence out there. This is leading to a big cause and an outcome, and hopefully no one has to be maimed in the process. But this is the scientific process, and people will still want to participate in it as much as we think. And this is defining the fact that we are not the same anymore as so many other people in society.
What would people do if they mandated that to keep your cats and dogs, you had to constantly inject them? And after constantly being injected, you were told their immune system is down, they're immunocompromised, their heart is damaged, they start getting skin issues, that they're vomiting and feeling unwell, and they're confused, and you can see they're not there in the eyes anymore. You wouldn't put up with it. You wouldn't put up with it for your cat. And you wouldn't put up with it with your dog. And a lot of people are vaccinating their animals less. They're going to holistic vets. There are holistic vets out there, by the way, for your lovely furries. They're hard to find, but they're not too far away. So that's always a good idea. And now we wouldn't accept it for our animals, but people accepted it for their children, and they accepted it for themselves. And we've got to rethink this. And I feel very, very sorry for the people who are not awake yet. I do feel the majority are. Because I feel they're almost lambs to the slaughter, and it's really rich that those who are promoting this kind of thing talk about misinformation and disinformation when they're the biggest purveyors of it. It is a very topsy-turvy world right now.
Absolutely. Well, the whole slogan of vaccination was that prevention was better than cure. But when when preventative medicine doesn't prevent you from getting it, well, then it's automatically failed. And the argument, therefore, that it was somehow going to prevent hospitalizations and death is an absolute lie. It is just kicking the can down the road to protect a story, a narrative that's fundamentally broken at its core. So if this is what it takes for RFK Jr. to prove his point, so be it, even if it's not the perfect outcome. And so the battle continues. Well, we have got to the end of another show, our 106. Wow. One more for the week, and then the big long weekend. So it's been a ripper, and I look forward to doing it all again tomorrow.
We were generously offered yesterday on Club Grubbery. If you didn't see that, you can catch it on Jason and I's social media. The addresses are down there at the bottom of the screen. That was fun. And I think we're going to get John Larter onto the Daily Australian, which will be absolutely fantastic. He's a former Australian paramedic, mayor, deputy mayor, very, very interesting guy, very accomplished. So I look forward to getting him on the show. So thanks for watching the Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, and Jason Olbourne. We will do this for the last time this week again tomorrow.